hard to explain.
Preparing to transmit. ET encounter.
Did UFOs abduct a woman from her New York apartment?
Am I just going crazy? What is it?
Personally, I'd just call a taxi.
Scheduling the uninvited.
I'm Prince Stewart, and I'm settling in for a little alien invasion week.
Tomorrow, beginning at 9.
Texas took me by surprise. The wagon train.
The trading posts. The panhandle.
The western swing.
The stagecoach.
We even learned to speak the language. Howdy, partner.
Howdy.
Even the vacations are bigger in Texas. Our Texas Travel Guide has 264 pages of helpful information, and it's free when you call 1-800-8888-TEX or visit us at TravelTex.com. You'll get the insider's view of Texas, what to see, what to do, where to stay. Free when you call 1-800-8888-TEX. So give us a call, y'all. Texas, it's more than you think. It's like a whole other country.
Arecibo, Puerto Rico, is the nerve center for those scientists who believe that far out in the cosmos is the only place we'll find extraterrestrial life. The largest radio telescope in the world is at the disposal of SETI, the search for extraterrestrial intelligence.
I really do think that the aliens are out there. I don't think they're here. The reason for that is simply the lack of credible evidence, in my opinion. I mean, it's very hard to travel from one star to the next, despite what you see in the movies and on television. It's not just a matter of calling up the engine room and telling Scotty to put the pedal to the metal.
SETI was originally funded by NASA and has searched for signs of extraterrestrial intelligence for more than 20 years. The space agency no longer invests in their experiment, and there are those who argue it's because NASA already knows that ET is here.
Observing 4067? No, 4061. 4061.
It's a view that SETI's astronomers reject out of hand. They're convinced that the first contact with ET will be a radio signal that shows up on this screen.
Yeah, people often ask, have you had any close calls? Are you close to success? Well, that isn't the way this works. It's kind of what you might call a one-bit experiment. In other words, it's either yes or no. And so far, the answer is no. It's sort of like Chris Columbus, you know, until he sights land, all he's seen is water. And that's our situation.
So far, all signals received have turned out to be false alarms. So is it worth continuing the search?
The question of whether anybody else is out there is the oldest unanswered question that our species has ever asked. And personally, I wouldn't work on a project that I didn't think had a chance of success.
Well, I certainly believe that the aliens are out there. I mean, I have personally no doubt about that. Obviously, there's no proof. In my opinion, there's no proof of that yet. But the reason that I think that it's got to be true is primarily just the vastness of the cosmos. I mean, there are 500 billion stars in our galaxy. There are 50 billion other galaxies, each with a 500 billion stars. That's a lot of real estate. And it would be bizarre in the extreme to think that this is the only bit of real estate where anything interesting is happening.
The founding father of SETI, Professor Frank Drake, devised an equation that estimates the universe to be teeming with intelligent life. So if ET is out there and could have reached us, then it's those who deal with space travel who are most likely to have seen some signs. Dr. Farouk Al-Baz, a geologist, now works at Boston University. For 6 years, he was a senior member of NASA's legendary Apollo program. He was head of astronaut training and responsible for intricate experiments that were scheduled for testing on the moon's surface. During his time in mission control, he experienced firsthand some unusual happenings involving astronaut Ken Mattingly in the lunar orbiter.
The one most peculiar sighting of something that we never found out what it was, and we thought it should be easy to, was the sighting of flashes on the surface of the moon by Ken Mattingly during the Apollo 16 mission. One of the objectives of that Apollo 16 mission was to see how much can we see and photograph in the part of the moon that is not lit by the sun, but by Earth shine. The first time Ken Mattingly began to do this, he said something that, I'll be damned, I just saw a flash. And we said, what flash? So he said, I just saw a light flash on the surface of the moon. Something on the moon flashed. As he came around the next time and we said, now be careful with this thing and look again and mark your time when you see it so we know exactly when it happens, because we want to tie this to whatever is happening in the landing site.
One of NASA's experiments on the moon involved highly sensitive seismometers that, among other things, could detect the impact of incoming meteors. If Mattingly's flashes appeared again, the instruments should record the impact of a meteor, the most likely explanation for his sighting. And so, on the next lunar orbit, Ken Mattingly was briefed to look out for flashes and report what he saw.
He said, okay, and he did that, and he saw 2 flashes, this time and with that one orbit, not one. So we picked up the exact times, and we took these to our colleagues, the ones that had the seismometers, but at that time there was absolutely no evidence of anything hitting the moon at these hours, because it would have been picked up for it. There is absolutely no explanation. And that remained a complete mystery.
At this time, the Russians had an unmanned presence on the moon, and that could have been the cause. But there are still some unexplained pictures. This one shows a shadow racing across the moon's surface, and here, a flash appears from a crater as an unidentified object passes overhead.
There's a funny object right there. And the astronaut's going to pan around here. Notice the moon never goes out of sight. There it is again, and the object, it's changed.
Dr. Jack Kasher has studied this film and is convinced that it shows a UFO on the moon. Head of physics at Nebraska University, Dr. Kasher's academic background is impressive.
I studied the physics of the effects of nuclear weapons, among other things. I specialized in electromagnetic theory, electromagnetic pulses, did some work on the Star Wars program out there. In 1991, I started doing research with NASA. My clearance was up to the secret restricted data. In fact, one paper that I wrote was so classified that I couldn't read it myself. I had to get special permission to read it.
Dr. Kasher has closely studied another film taken in space during shuttle mission SDS-48. He's certain that here there is irrefutable proof that there are UFOs in space, and NASA must know it. After a flash, an object seems to move rapidly away from an approaching missile. NASA sees it differently.
4 NASA scientists looked at these objects, and there will be another one right here, and decided that they were probably ice particles close to the shuttle that were being blown by the attitude adjuster rockets that go off to adjust the shuttle's orientation.
It's a fact that the shuttle's jets do blow ice particles around in space, as Story Musgrave knows well.
If you just shut the engines down, there's thousands of particles which come forward for some reason. You see this marvelous debris come across the front windows.
My analysis leads me otherwise. I have concluded that these are probably spacecraft out in space away from the shuttle. We'll see the main object appear here soon. There it is. It's going to go up here, and there will be a double flash down here. Apparently, in response to that, it'll cut back very sharply in that direction, and then you'll see a streak go through where the object had been. Watch for the double flash. There's the flash. There it goes, and there goes the streak right through where it had been. I think they're spacecraft because they change direction, apparently in response to the flashes. And so they're maneuvering, they're accelerating, changing directions out in space, and that's my definition of spacecraft.
I'm convinced that this is snowflakes, small snowflakes illuminated by the sun. There was one snowflake doing a 90 degrees turn. I don't understand why this snowflake makes such a kind of turn. It could be that it collides with something else, so it makes a different direction.
These two objects reacted.
I've seen the report by Dr. Kasher. I've heard his presentations. He has the timing of the flashes wrong. He has the position of the jets and the pulses wrong. The timing of the flashes occurred at a certain time. I tried to tell him several years ago about the fact that the visible flash on the television does not fully coincide with the actual rocket pulse. And I have a letter I sent him. He disregarded that.
I think that NASA would tend to be quiet about anything that would tend to have an extraterrestrial interpretation. I think it's like the rest of the branches of the government. I think there's a cover-up, and they are keeping things concerning UFOs from us.
3, 2, 1. Booster ignition and liftoff of Columbia on a life sciences mission for Earth and space.
The fact is, there are unidentified flying objects in space, and even on the way there. This one appeared in the middle of a shuttle launch.
Space Up Huntsville, we have switched to TBC-2.
On another occasion, on mission STS-73, astronaut Katie Coleman is heard to announce loud and clear that she's just seen a UFO.
We have an unidentified flying object.
Is there something going on in space that we're not being told?
CompuServe. Serious information. CompuServe. Dependable internet access. CompuServe. Call toll-free. Sign up today.
Nights in white satin, never reaching the end.
Imagine owning all your favorite AM radio hits for just $12.99. Presenting AM Gold. 43 fantastic hits for an unbelievable $12.99.
In a little while from now, if I'm not feeling any less sour, I promise myself to treat myself and visit a nearby tower.
Last night, I didn't get to sleep at all. No, no.
Oh, girl, I'd be in trouble if you left me now.
AM Gold. 43 of your best loved hits. More than 2 full hours for just $12.99 on 2 compact discs or 2 double-length cassettes.
Me and Mrs. Jones, just to know that's a love song playing on the radio. Precious and few are the moments we two can share. Baby, I'd love you to want me the way that I want you. I can see clearly now the rain is gone.
Then audition other great AM Gold albums. There's no minimum to buy. Cancel anytime.
Midnight at the OA.
43 of your favorite hits for just $12.99. AM Gold is not in stores. Call now.
To order AM Gold, call 1-800-764-0055. That's 1-800-764-0055. Or send $12.99 plus $3.95 shipping and handling to AM Gold, Department 13, Richmond, Virginia 23280.
What if aliens really did invade this week? Wouldn't that be ironic? Maybe it's just me.
Alien Invasion Week.
Tuesday on TLC. Enter the real world of life in the ER.
Open your eyes.
A place where they see more cases in a day
Don't call neurosurgery
than most places see in a month.
Rock on.
It's an all-new episode that takes you on the scene.
Leg's broken, okay?
Where seconds can save a life.
I think you got lucky. This time.
Feel the rush of trauma, life in the ER. Tuesday at 8 on TLC. Adventures for your mind.
Go on the warpath with TLC for a spectacular television special. It's the story of the greatest warriors ever, the Romans. The mighty Roman army plundered and conquered for 1,000 years, but it wasn't firepower that fueled their success. Leadership and willpower were their virtues. Steel and muscle their weapons. Turn on TLC. Find out how the art of combat became the soul of war. Rome, power and glory. Next Sunday at 9 on TLC. Adventures for your mind.
One of the most puzzling incidents in space happened on mission STS-82 to service the Hubble telescope. Astronauts Steve Smith and Mark Lee reveal that they're seeing some strange flashes as they re-enter the airlock of the shuttle.
Okay. All right. That's good. Let's go out. Oh, that flash. Oh, that light flashing off of HST there. What? I just thought of it in my imagination. Yeah, I saw it too, so it's not. There was two of them. There's another one. What are they? Let me show the lights flickering in here. Maybe they're taking pictures.
Steve Smith explains what that conversation was all about.
Well, Mark and I are in the airlock at this point, and you can see from and here that all of a sudden we saw a couple of lights flashing in the airlock. And when we were first asked about this conversation months later, we had forgotten about this. But anyway, I said, "Is that a light flashing to him?" And Mark says, "What are they?" Asking, is it a light coming from either the airlock? And then Mark asks, "Are they taking pictures of us through the airlock window?" And again, they would have a flash. We take about 10,000 pictures on each flight. So all I can think of is that it's pretty hard to turn in this thing because you're like in a closet. And we couldn't tell what light it was, so I think Mark probably had turned to a certain point, and then he said, "Oh, there's the one in front of me," or something.
Oh, no, I was guessing at that one for a second, but I had that one the whole time. Yeah, I was looking at that one.
And I don't know what that is. I've never heard the word valence or surveillance used.
After I get there, 941-63-767, that users are looking good.
Whatever the lights were that the astronauts had seen, the transmission of their conversation appeared to be interrupted at this point.
Everything we say is basically broadcast to anybody who's listening. We have no button on our spacesuit, for example, when we're out there, that we can push just to talk to your crewmate that's spacewalking with you, or just to the people in the cockpit. We have no such button. So when we talk, it's automatically broadcast on an antenna off of our backpack out to the shuttle and then down to Earth.
Americans are not the only ones in space. The Mir space station has allowed Russian cosmonauts to break the records for the length of time spent in space. During a docking with Mir, cosmonaut Musa Manarov filmed an unidentified object that passed by.
At some point in the filming, I caught sight of something that seemed to have separated from the ship. Moreover, it was rotating as it moved away and changing its brightness. I can't say exactly how far away it was. I can only say it was not very close, because the camera was focused on infinity. At first, it seemed to me that something has separated from the ship. But then, when I examined the ship, I realized that there was nothing that could have broken away. What's more, there were no alarms going off. Everything was calm. Later, there were lengthy arguments as to what it could possibly have been.
On another mission, Russian cosmonaut Gennady Strikalov is certain he saw an unusual, unidentified flying object in space.
It was a huge sphere. I think it appeared when we were over Newfoundland. The sea was in the background. It was shining, sparkling, of absolutely even shape. It shone like the balls that hang on trees at Christmas, greenish in color and all shimmering. It was impossible to take your eyes off it. I watched it for maybe 5 or 7 seconds, but I didn't have a camera, and if I'd gone to get one, I would have lost it. For just as suddenly as it appeared, so it just disappeared.
It's not difficult to misinterpret objects in space. This mysteriously floating sphere is actually a recently developed remote camera called an air cam. A distinguished astronaut who agrees with Jack Casher's belief in the reality of UFOs is Gordon Cooper. Now in his 80s, Cooper had a sighting while serving as a fighter pilot in Germany in 1951.
Well, the weatherman had reported seeing these objects in the sky, and various other people got binoculars and looked for them, saw them also, and they were flying formations similar to our fighter formations, and we proceeded to launch some airplanes to see if we could get up to where they were, and we could not, and gave up on it. They were higher and faster than we could go.
Gordon Cooper was so convinced that there was evidence of UFOs here on Earth that in 1978 he went to the United Nations and presented them with a letter describing his experience. If it's just an illusion that extraterrestrials have visited Earth, why does the UFO phenomenon continue to grow? Why do people continue to take pictures of unexplainable images? It is the mission of science to prove or disprove the unexplained.
Next on Alien Invasion Week.
One pilot reports a UFO. Another sees the same thing 1,000 miles away. Are they both a little unusual?
And I had a very fine view of a hub-shaped craft.
And are you ready to hear the best-kept secret of the century?
All the triangular-shaped vehicles that have been spotted belong to the U.S. government.
Downloading UFOs Uncovered on Alien Invasion Week. Next.
TLC. Alien adventures for your mind.
You're watching TLC. Adventures for your mind.
The search for evidence of UFOs continues.
It was going thousands of miles an hour. I've never seen anything that fast.
There was no mistaking them as anything except a flying saucer.
Extremely secret program that to this day the U.S. government denies ever existed.
It was not an airplane, it was an object. An unknown flying object.
Pilots come forward to talk about their close encounters. Have they seen visitors from another world? Has Earth been visited by alien life? Are they monitoring our daily lives? Or is it merely a string of coincidental sightings of objects that, though not easily explained, are earthly in origin? Taking the quest to another level brings us to those who spend a part of their lives in the skies.
Hey, you guys don't know anything about some kind of a weather balloon or UFO that's out in the vicinity of Fort Sumner tonight, do you? Looks like it's 300 to 400 foot long, cylindrical, some kind of a strobe on it and everything else.
Pilots are reporting sightings from the air, and they are prepared to talk about them.
It was not an airplane, it was an object. An unknown flying object.
We had someone call here earlier about a pilot spotting an unidentified flying object.
Yep, that's us.
It's tracking about 390 knots. We've been tracking it for about 3-4 minutes now.
This kind of things is flying. For us, still being unknown traffic, and a lot of controllers in the world, they know about it.
What is it that pilots and air traffic controllers are seeing? In Russia, a military commission that investigated the UFO phenomenon for over 20 years has arrived at an extraordinary conclusion.
The final conclusion of this high-level commission was a recognition that there probably was an alien civilization present.
I had a couple of aircraft reported something 300 to 400 foot long, cylindrical in shape with a strobe flashing off to the end of it.
Oh.
At 30,000 feet.
All over the world, highly trained pilots and air traffic controllers are observing strange objects in the skies. In the past, they've been reluctant to speak publicly about their experiences, but a growing number are now prepared to come forward. Captain Werner Utter was one of Germany's most distinguished commercial pilots. During his time as chief pilot with Lufthansa, he had 3 separate sightings of UFOs. And although he didn't report them at the time, he's prepared to talk about them now.
One flight, we took off in Beirut. Destination was Damascus first. And when we have passed the Lebanon mountains, I saw a light just ahead of our airplane. And suddenly this light came very fast towards us. First I thought it was an airplane, and this big light, it was 2 meters in diameter, and it was pulsating. It was standing between the inside left engine and the cockpit. Suddenly, after 1 or 2 minutes, this light went up like a rocket and disappeared.
Years later, Captain Utter had another UFO sighting. This time, he reported it to air traffic control at Maastricht. This is the actual conversation.
Okay, fine, and for 61, about 4 miles ago, we passed an unknown object like a cigar. Do you have anything on the scope? What does it like? Looked like a cigar, about 3-4 meters. It was too fast. No, we have nothing on the radar. Okay, fine. It was about 100 meters below us, just passing. Probably kind of UFO. Maybe Silverstag.
UFOs have been seen in the skies over different continents. In February 1995, an American pilot encountered a strange light while flying over Albuquerque. Like Werner Utter, he reported it to air traffic control.
We were at 37,000 feet, 100 miles from Albuquerque at night, and the whole cockpit just lit up, kind of this bluish green. And I thought air traffic control had put another aircraft at our altitude by accident. It seemed so close. And it was going thousands of miles an hour. I've never seen anything that fast. And so air traffic control got on, and we said, "Do you see anything on your screen?" And she said no. And then she asked the other airliners in the area, and they said, "Yeah, we see it too." And one guy said, "Oh, it must be space debris." And right when he was saying that, this thing, a big pulse of white light came from behind it, and it just took off at a 45-degree angle back up. And I got on the radio and I said, "Well, when does space debris or meteorites go back up?" And at that time, there were 4 other airliners representing all the carriers, and nobody wanted to report it.
British pilot Graham Shepherd had 2 UFO sightings in 30 years of flying. But he didn't just see lights in the sky.
I had a very clear view of this craft as it came towards us. It flew slightly below us, several hundred feet below us, and about a quarter of a mile away. And I had a very fine view in the sunlight, reflecting sun, of a hub-shaped craft. I would say about 30 feet across. It was quite distinct in its outline. There was a number of fair weather cumulus clouds around, giving very, very good depth perception, so that this was between us and the clouds that we were flying over. And once we got back to London, we discussed the whole sighting and came to the conclusion that we shouldn't report it because it would be detrimental to our career prospects.
Looked like a cigar, about 3-4 meters. It was too fast.
If pilots see something that is unusual and very strange, the chances are very high that it won't be reported. So my opinion is that there is a huge resource of experience and sightings that have never been reported.
In Mexico alone, there have been thousands of UFO sightings in the last 5 years. Although many may be tricks of light or weather balloons, they're real enough to be causing concern to the pilots and air traffic controllers who see them on their radar screens.
We have the responsibility to inform the pilots flying in all this in our airspace about that unknown traffic, the condition of flight, what is the heading, any kind of information that could be important for the pilots. The point is that they are flying there. These kind of things exist because they are flying, the pilots has a visual contact with them, and sometimes the radar have registered about it.
Although these sorts of sightings are alleged to occur frequently, Mexican pilots and air traffic controllers admit they're rarely spoken about in public or the subject of official reports.
In Mexico, there is no official record of these cases, although there have been pilots asking air traffic controllers for information when they've seen lights in the sky. But these sightings are not registered in official reports. That only happens when there has been an accident.
One incident that was officially reported happened in 1994. Mexicana Flight 180 was approaching Mexico City Airport when a UFO was momentarily seen on ground radar.
We detect two echoes close to this flight, but very momentary, I mean just in a few moments, them disappear. But we receive phone calls 30 minutes before about that the people was watching something on top of the World Trade Center building. That building is located very close to the track of the final approach of runways 5 in Mexico. And in that precisely point, this object having a collision, apparently a collision with his landing gear. The people has visual contact in the building. That building is located in the track of the final approach of runways 5, and in that point, the aircraft has a collision.
That night, as Flight 180 made its final approach, Captain Raimundo Cervantes was at the controls. This is the official recording of his conversation with the control tower. Although the UFO had disappeared from radar screens, this object in the sky was still seen hovering over the city. Flight 180 landed safely, but the crew was unsure as to whether they had had a mid-air collision. It was certainly close.
We noticed something in the distance that looked like it was on a collision course with us, and this craft was coming towards us very fast. It really was a tense moment.
The next day, when the plane was inspected, there was some damage to an undercarriage reported. Officially, it was recorded as metal fatigue, but Captain Cervantes disagreed.
I don't accept it. I saw it myself, and I know this wasn't metal fatigue.
The object was very big, silver-colored and shining.
That event was registered by the Mexican authorities, our supervisor, and in this center, and many people knows about it.
In South America, evidence from pilots and concern for air safety has prompted the Civil Aviation Authority to begin an official investigation into UFOs with the help of the Chilean Air Force.
Este comité fue creado en octubre del año pasado a raíz de las evidencias.
The committee was created last October because of the large amount of evidence that we have concerning anomalous phenomena.
Analizando todos aquellos fenómenos que no sean normales.
Since then, we have been analyzing any cases and reports that we get from technical staff, air traffic controllers and pilots. We also get information from local flying clubs, and especially from the Air Force and the Army.
Squadron Commander Danilo Catalan, a top gun who trained at America's elite fighter pilot school, has had 2 encounters with UFOs while serving in the Chilean Air Force.
We were flying in a training mission, an interception mission, 2 airplanes. All of a sudden, the radar ground control, called me, and they told me to go to intercept an unknown traffic, maybe some civilian traffic, a commercial traffic flying in the military zone. We lock on the targets. All of a sudden, we saw a strange form, like a tube, like a Habano, like a gray cigar, a flat gray cigar. And the dimension may be like a commercial airplane, like a 707, 747, like that. All of a sudden, this object goes to the right in a hard turn, like a brake, with a 90 degrees, and accelerate more or less to 5 Mach. 5 Mach is 5 times the speed of sound. On the ground control was the same picture, was the same. Was the first close encounter with a UFO report.
What are the UFOs that pilots and air traffic controllers are seeing?
564, can you pay that object at all on your radar?
Cactus 564, no I don't. Talking to 3 or 4 guys around here, no one knows what that is.
My certainty is that what I saw and what I had seen represents a technology which not only can fly in our planetary environment, outside our normal aerodynamic envelopes, but by implication must be able to fly outside the planetary environment, well beyond our dreams and expectations.
It's right out of the X-Files. I mean, it's a definite UFO or something like that.
I don't know what could be, really don't. I don't know. In case that belongs to the Earth, they are broken all the international rules, and that is very dangerous because nobody knows nothing about that flights, you know?
It might be that it is something we don't know yet. Maybe, as people say, from outside space. I don't know it, but it could be.
But could pilots and air traffic controllers be mistaken? Is there an answer to the UFO phenomenon much closer to home that may be the best kept secret of the century?
This TLC program is sponsored in part by Hertz. For business, for pleasure. Nobody does it exactly like Hertz.
Is that Johnson's team behind us?
Exactly.
Are they members of Hertz #1 Club Gold?
Exactly.
Are we members of Hertz #1? Not exactly.
So thanks to Hertz, they're going to get to the meeting on time.
And we'll be late? So exactly what'll I tell the boss?
In rent-a-car, there's Hertz, and there's not exactly. Make sure you choose the right one.
And then a dog in the cargo hold 8-hour presentation.
Is he buying it?
Not exactly.
I was driving across country on the way to my first job, just out of college. I had hardly any money. Yeah, that's when my car starts making this weird noise. I saw a Firestone store with MasterCare car service. So I had them check it out, and guess what? They found the problem and even suggested a way to fix it that saved me money when I needed it most. I'll never forget that.
Let's go. Load them up.
MasterCare means we guarantee to fix it right or your money back.
MasterCare at Firestone. Just what your car needs.
You know Microsoft, why not use your connections? The people who made your PC fast and reliable with Windows now do the same for your internet connections. Call now to try MSN Internet Access, free. It gives you Microsoft technology and speeds of up to 56K for fast, reliable connections to the things that interest you most. Like planning a trip, exploring MSN.com and the internet, and of course, keeping in touch. And MSN Internet Access is ranked #1 in customer satisfaction by J.D. Power & Associates. Call now to try it free for a month. Then do nothing to keep getting unlimited MSN Internet Access and email for just $19.95 a month. Click the MSN icon on your Windows 95 or 98 desktop or call for a free CD. With exceptional speed and reliability that take the guesswork out of internet connections, there's only one question left to ponder.
Hi, I'm French Stewart, and I am deeply involved in Alien Invasion Week. I'm busy.
All this week at 9, TLC.
The Roman Empire, the conquering, the hedonism. You've seen it all. Well, TLC's got its own spin. In the 60s, partying took on a whole new meaning, but the Romans wrote the book. In the 80s, urban warriors hit the streets, but Roman warriors sacked the world. And in the 90s, prize fighters made their millions, but Roman gladiators made history. So turn on TLC and see Rome like you've never seen it before. Rome, Power and Glory, next Sunday at 9 on TLC. Adventures for your mind.
Where should you invest in 1999? Medical breakthroughs? Innovations in telecom? Emerging technologies? There's a world of choices. So every year, the research analysts at Solomon Smith Barney pick their favorite stock in over 80 industries. To see what they recommend, call 1-800-EARNS-IT, extension 184, for your free special report, Top Picks 1999. It starts with an outlook for the economy and interest rates. It tells you which top picks our analysts believe offer the most earnings potential, the highest yields, which stocks will benefit from developing trends, like the graying of America and the emergence of the digital generation. Top Picks 1999 has the information you'll need to diversify your portfolio this year. Call 1-800-EARNS-IT, extension 184, for your free special report. Let's get to work. Solomon Smith Barney.
The research and development of state-of-the-art military aircraft has always been carried out under the strictest veil of secrecy. The latest machines have decades of high-cost science and technology invested in them, and they've been in the skies for years before their existence is ever admitted. Such ultra-secret programs are known in defense circles as black projects. And in this world, at any given time, there are few individuals who know for sure the shape of things to come. In Washington, an organization that studies black projects is the Federation of American Scientists. John Pike is their leading expert.
Well, a black project is any project conducted where the fact of the existence of the project is supposed to be hidden from the public. The total black budget in the United States today is probably somewhere between $30 and $35 billion a year.
The end products of black projects invariably have a long lineage. The Northrop Flying Wing of the 1950s is a direct ancestor of today's stealth aircraft. High levels of secrecy make it impossible to know for certain what may have been in development at any given time. It's possible that in the past, exotic aircraft existed whose designs and flight characteristics still remain a secret to this day. Are there any that might fit the description of the UFOs that pilots have been seeing over the years?
They didn't tell us about the U-2. They didn't tell us about the SR-71. They didn't tell us about a lot of aircraft even during World War II. At one time, the P-51 was secret. The Thunderbolt was secret when they were originally testing them. In other words, it wasn't widespread knowledge.
Jack Pickett is the retired editor of an Air Force magazine. He claims that while working at an air base in the 1960s, he saw previously unknown aircraft that may well explain flying saucers.
We saw some aircraft parked at the end of a runway, and I turned to my partner and says, "Did you see what I just saw?" And he says, "I sure did." I says, "Those are flying saucers." He says, "That's what they look like to him."
Jack Pickett made his own scale drawings of what he saw that day in 1967.
They were a disc type aircraft, flying wing circular. They had the pilot compartment dead center, and they had the tricycle landing gear, and there was no, they were jets. 3 of them had what looked like twin jets on them with the exhaust coming out of the bottom. I later got to walk right around them. And the big one had, looked like 4 jet intakes, 2 on each side of the main fuselage, and 4 exhausts out of the bottom. There was no mistaking them as anything except a flying saucer-shaped aircraft.
Pickett says he was given permission by the base commander to ask questions about the aircraft he'd seen for an article in the magazine he was editing.
The very first question I asked him, I says, "Are these the flying saucers everybody's been hearing about?" He says, "Yes, they are." So I asked him, "Are these the aircraft that caused the Roswell publication stuff?" He says, "Yes, they are." I says, "All this stuff about aliens and things, they come from your aircraft?" He says, "Yes, we had accidents." So I asked him, "Well, obviously this type aircraft had to be for some specific use." I says, "Were they spy planes?" He says, "Yes, over Russia." He says, "Yes, but you cannot print that." And I don't know whether I should even say that over this film or not.
Apart from his own account, there are no official records to corroborate Jack Pickett's story of the American military's flying saucers in the 60s. But there is evidence in this recently declassified Air Force document that saucer-shaped aircraft were on the drawing boards of America's Air Technical Intelligence Center 10 years earlier, in 1955. It was called Project Silver Bug and contained plans for the development of a vertical takeoff, saucer-shaped craft capable of flying at high altitudes and supersonic speeds using a radial flow engine. However, there's no evidence that Project Silver Bug went ahead. But tracing a possible lineage for saucer-shaped craft back 10 years earlier, there is a craft that fits the bill. In 1946, Thomas Smith was an engineer working on classified aircraft that were being constructed for the U.S. Navy.
They took me out into the hangar and they showed me this new jet aircraft, and I said, "Oh." And then I looked over to the left and I said, "Holy mackerel, what is that over there?" And they said, "Well, since you're clear for top secret, it's called the Pancake. As a matter of fact, the material you've been testing is being used to build that." It looked like a disc, and the New Haven papers would report the fact that some round object was saw flying over New Haven. And of course we were laughing because those of us who worked on it knew what it was that they had seen.
It's certainly the case that in the 1960s and in the 1950s, the Central Intelligence Agency knew that many UFO reports were in fact sightings of its classified balloon and aircraft programs, and didn't do anything to dispel the public confusion. The public was seeing a lot of classified programs back in the 50s and 60s, looked like unidentified flying objects. The intelligence community knew that those were their own programs and just didn't tell anyone.
Even though many UFO sightings may have been triggered by secret projects, the Air Force had already made a public statement that there were no secrets of their own that could be mistaken for UFOs.
We can say that the recent sightings are in no way connected with any secret development by any agency of the United States.
Is Jason there? I'll see.
Still looking.